Hello, welcome. My name is Rashida Tutashinda. I work at Center for Third World Organizing. I work in operations. However, I also have a group called Women in the Sacred Arts, where I do a rites of passage group. And one of the things that we sometimes talk about um, is not only in the group, but in our org, the question becomes with liberatory leadership, we talk about bringing our authentic self. But what does that mean when you are trying to bring who you are spiritually to the room? And what does that look like when we're trying to reimagine organizations that will allow you to come authentically yourself? A lot of us come from indigenous places, and we're all indigenous to the earth. So we have rituals, ceremonies, we have ways of doing, ways of praying, um, that the question becomes, how do you bring that to an org and still deal with compliancy? And and if you do, we're going to throw out one of our first polls. What does that look like for you? What tools do you use to bring your spirituality to your work? So, Amy, if you could get one of the first polls up, please. Does everyone see the poll? When you want to participate in the discussion, if you raise your hand, it would allow us to see you on camera. This is the this is one way where we'll be able to bring you kind of literally on stage and participate in the discussion. So, is anybody willing to participate? Let's do the poll. Yes, great. Thank you, PG. Maya. Actually, it's me. I just realized, oh, I should hit live chat so I could see your response. So if you want to be on camera, if you raise your hand in the chat, I could bring you up, or Jay can bring you up, and we can have a more engaging conversation. Ah, 77.8% say yes, they bring spirituality in the work that you do. And 22 said no. So if you bring spirituality in the work that you do, what tools do you use? Can we just real quickly um, bring up the second poll real quick, Amy? Do you use, I mean, what does that look like for you? And I would be interested in knowing, do people want to? Do they want to bring their own? Ah, okay. Meditation, ritual. Okay. Oh, this is wonderful. Okay. This is surprising now. This is, yeah. Ceremony. Good, good. So when we say bring it into the work we do, I'm not talking personally. I'm trying to understand, how do we as an org bring our spiritual authentic self into a room without offending anyone. And of course, if we're authentic, it shouldn't be offensive. But also, do people opt out of participation? And what does ceremony look like? I see a lot of ritual. And some people want to choose more than one. So we can't choose more than one. I apologize for that. But we can definitely say that if you're choosing more than one of these, this is wonderful. I am, because we're not having the same kind of live, if you want to be seen, I would really appreciate and encourage you to raise your hand. That way, Jake can bring you live and we can have a conversation, because this is what this is about. We talk about values a lot. Um, what people say uh, with their words, because we know words are powerful. But I do acknowledge and appreciate you coming and sharing your words through writing. Um, so I do a group. We talk about embodiment, because when we're talking about movement spaces, we've talked about trauma, we've talked about Roe versus Wade, we've talked about, gender trauma. But if we know, and this is just a question, if we know that a lot of Black and Brown people have been done harm in the world, and when we bring our people into our settings for training, how many of us include our spiritual ceremonies and rituals that will help them embody the principles that we're talking about? So it's one thing to say, hey, I was abused and I am trying to work through. First, you got to sit with that. But what do we do? What do we do when we just need to scream? What part of our trainings allow us to know that we're going on the street and people die? What kind of rituals and ceremonies are we creating so that people can grieve aside from therapy? And I think therapy is great, but I think that ritual and ceremony is also a way of embodying our grief and taking shame out of grief, because usually these rituals and ceremonies are done in community. And how many of us, since we are movement people, do community ceremonies and rituals, knowing that we have a community that have been traumatized, that are suffering, and that are hurt? As we reach back oftentimes for the people that we all stand on, then we reach back into an indigenous way of knowing that we all can hold no matter what ethnic group we've come from. So how do we, or do we even include this in our training? Or is this something that we keep privately to ourselves and it feeds us? But because community rituals have always been rituals that are done, so that we can sweep clean the energy of what's happening to our people in the street. So I'm just wondering, I'm throwing out more questions than I'm answering. Um, so I see some people are part of liberation collectives. That's great. How many people in here how many people are part of something that feeds them spiritually? And so their spiritual feeding is them sitting at the table, aside from the org they might be a part of or building, or, um, I feed myself spiritually. I walk a very specific path, but I struggle in an org, in any organizational setting, because sometimes you want to say, well, why don't we do this? Well, why don't we come together and create a ceremony? Why don't we come together and create ritual? Um, how many of us feel comfortable in doing that? How many of us want to know more about how to do that? So now I'm just looking for more, just one word, more, or single, letting me know that you're just doing it privately um, by yourself. Okay. So, Regina, if you're Callaway, if you're in this audience, I would love to bring you up here. I saw you earlier. I'm hoping that you're willing to raise your hand and come up. If you are Black Exhale, so I would be interested in to know, what does that mean to exhale? And what does it mean? What do you do for an exhale? I know that meditation was definitely something that everyone say they do. Meditation gives you those moments of stopping. Meditation can also, because I'm a follower of Dr. Joe Dispenza. So I do meditations um, that take you into more of a quantum reality, so that you're imagining your possibilities and you're living in that imagining until that imagining is living in you and it becomes real. So, but I do also acknowledge and recognize that meditating, whew, gives you that exhale moment. Ah, thank you. Thank
Of
you. I
course.
appreciate you for that. So tell us about your exhaling, Antoinette.
Well, the moment you said Dr. Joe, I was just like, I'm in. Because I also do his work and created or gathered up a group of Black folk that I meet at the retreats, and created a Black co-healing collective so that we can meditate together, we can create in the field together, we can transform one another and our communities together. And so Black Exhale, though, is about that release. It's about acknowledging the ways in which we've been holding our breath for centuries. It's about creating the spaces where we can release and what it looks like, not just at the individual level, but at the ancestral level, as well as at the collective level. And we have to create containers that can hold that.
I agree. I agree.
Mhm.
And I know Akasanama, so I know that.
Yes, Dr. Namin and
Yeah,
I are great
yes,
friends.
that's my girl. That's my sister
Oh
from
my
along.
goodness. And
So
she sits
yes.
on the board for Black Exhale.
Mm.
So we should be best friends.
So, what do other people do? And I love that we're holding containers, because although I do rites of passage, it's Black women and the sacred arts.
Mhm.
Because right now we need to have containers where we can hold each other, um, and recognize each other as spiritual beings on the planet before we can expand out.
Yes,
So
yes.
the spirit part is so missing in a lot of
Mhm.
orgs. I
Mhm.
love C2 because we're here. It's liberatory leadership. It's about bringing who you really are. So I could talk out loud about it.
Yeah.
But I've been in orgs. I've been an organizer where you couldn't talk out loud about it. Or people assumed if you're Black, you must be a particular denomination. I don't really care what denomination you are. That doesn't really matter. What
Mhm.
matters is our understanding that if we are truly these spirits having an experience that's human, then who feeds the spirit?
Yes, yes. And you know, for the work for Black Exhale, it's rooted in trauma work and trauma informed work. And if we look at the origin of the when violence on the Black body became normalized, there's a lot of spiritual trauma there. And as
Mhm.
long as we are not in alignment and separate from who we are as spiritual beings, then we can't access all of the power that we came into the world with. And so healing looks like acknowledging the traumas, whether it's the spiritual, whether it's the physical, the mental, the emotional, all of those. Once we engage all of those, then we have a access to a fully liberated being. Because
I
I
agree.
have my degrees, my Ivy League degrees, and yet the amount of trauma that my body has held, it didn't save me from needing to get surgery. It didn't save me from a tumor. It didn't save me from my emergency visits. And so once I then worked on my diet, I still wasn't saved. It was something deeper in the root. It was something that went beyond the body. And maybe it's part of my practice of, okay, I dealt with that. I got it right with the doctors. Okay, I got it right with my schedule. Okay, I got my credentials and I'm still ill. And so when you have that close of a proximity with death, then spirit starts to speak to you.
Hmm. Or you start listening, because
I start
I'm in the
listening.
mind that spirit has always talked. We just
Hmm.
have to sometimes stop and listen
Yeah,
and
yeah.
invite. So we talk about our body, our mind, our spirit. And I always think, just like they were talking about with versus Roe or just Survivor, when do we merge that? It's not about what you're fighting for versus what I'm fighting for. I don't feel like I have to choose because I'm looking at myself as a spiritual person. I know that I need to be over here with women's right. I know I need to be over here to fight for abortion right. I know I need, but we're living in a culture that dissects us. And we need to stop acting like we don't. And instead of saying, I'm an environmentalist organizer, we all need to just be organizers. And that there are issues that we need to address that cross all those paths. But spirit is outside, you know.
Mm.
It's going to trees. It's not doing everything on Zoom. Um, that's always my concern is, at first it's like, oh, everybody wants to make money, residual income, let's put it up, let people buy it. And I want to go outside and meet people. And I want to go outside and hold people and touch people. And it's easier for me to do that than sit in this room, which, you know, very transparent. I was full of anxiety to do. Um, Kai knows, I had to call and get taken off the cliff because being in front really brings anxiety for me. Um, Heart is still beating, but it helped just having someone here. So But these questions are serious questions because we're going to drop this brown body and leave. Wherever you believe we go to, everyone has an answer for where you go, even if you just don't think we go anywhere. But for those who do believe that there's something else, and I'm not talking heaven or hell, I'm talking about whatever it is your something else is, then we know that spirit is important because they just put on this is what I wore to the planet this time,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So I think that one of the things that has been helpful is for the last 7, 8 years, everybody has recognized ancestor honoring. Everybody calls on their ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
So if you call on your ancestors, then what you know is that we're eternal beings because you can't call on something that you don't think is still living.
That's right.
So so more information is poured out. More things are poured out. I'm sorry, Kai. Once I do get talking, I do talk a lot. Go ahead.
It's okay. I love this conversation. And Antoinette, I'm so thankful that you joined in. And I know Regina Calloway is Sister Regina Calloway is going to join us too soon. But when you were talking, Antoinette, and you were talking about like healing and what led you like to go and do the deeper spiritual work, I am in the process of healing right now. And so what you said really resonated with me. And I try to explain to people to heal. And people are like, oh, how's it going? And I'm like, it's a process. I don't know how to tell you how it's going because it is a process. And it feels almost like the more stones I uh, uh, overturn or unturn, whatever, uncover, the more there are, right? The deeper it is, the more work there is to do. And what I'm really holding is that to heal is a complete and total, it's a holistic act, right? And that it's not possible just to it just to look at just to do it in one way, right? When you said, okay, let me get my schedule together and let me do this and let me do all these areas, and they really have to work um, in in harmony with one another, right? Um, I it's interesting because I'm a part of this fellowship right now, and they're talking a lot about like the environment and what's happening in the world and climate and all that, and everybody talks about it like it's out there, and I'm like, it has to start here. Like all of it has to start with me. I have to be the center of, and y'all see my cats, but the
Mhm.
center of any of it has to start with me and what I believe is possible. My friend Nikita talks about deserving all the time. What I believe is that I deserve. One of the y'all were talking about Dr. Joe, and I recently got diagnosed with this with a fat disorder called lipedema, and I actually have something called lipolymphedema. I have a lipedema that has led to me having lymphedema, which is the swelling. So one side of my body typically really swells, right? And there's an imbalance there, and then trying to figure out like, how did I create this in the first place? Like what were the thoughts and the beliefs that were even in there that I wasn't conscious of to create this? And what I realized that I needed, because I was getting um, bullied and pressured and talked about in my family and in the school, in the world, about being big. I needed something that could defend me, right? And lipedema is the defense. It's like, see, it's not my fault. It's the defense. And I was watching Dr. Joe one time, and he's like, it's sure have you could have the disorder, you could have the disease, you can hold that if you want, you could live there. That's fine. Is it working for you? But if it's not working for you, then you have to be willing to let it go, let that story go. And I've been going through this period of like, I just found out that I have it. Now you want me to give it up? You know what I mean? Like I like it. it feels like I just got this gift and this awakening and enlightenment that I now have to be willing to let go to transform. And so what a lot of what I've been holding is what is possible if I don't have that. If I don't have lipedema, then what is possible in my life, right? And that's hard. That is hard to hold possibility, to think about what is possible in the world for us if we don't have harm, if we don't have terror, if we don't have oppression, if we don't have all these negative things oppressing us. What is possible in the world, and to allow us to really live into those thoughts and those beliefs, to create that, and to believe that you can actually do it, that's even possible. You know, I think people disagree that you create your reality, or have a hard time accepting that you create your reality, especially if it's trauma based or trauma filled, right? So what is possible for me, that's what I'm holding, is if I really want to heal and I want to step into who I'm meant to be in the world, what is possible if I'm willing to, if I don't have these other things that I've been holding on to.
Yeah. As someone that's been through illness, and of the things that I do, I used to be a professor of narrative medicine. And one of the workshops that I teach often is writing the body, because when I was healing from surgery, in that quiet place, I started talking to my body. And most importantly, I started listening to my body. And that was actually where my relationship with the ancestors developed, because I held a lot of shame around my illness. And as I got into conversation with my body was telling me that it was remembering things that had happened to bodies that looked like mine from before. And that enabled me to have a lot more compassion for what was manifesting on my body. And in being in conversation, I could take on things like, what are you here to teach me?
Mm-hmm.
Because the illnesses, there was one point where I went to a meditation retreat, and I realized that the space that I had entered into during the retreat, I had already known that space. It was illness that had put me into that space, where all of my attention turned away from the world because I did not have capacity. I was in too much pain. I had no capacity to take in the world. All of my attention came to me. And I was in so much pain that I could only walk really, really slowly. And everyone had to move because I did not have capacity to move out the way as I was walking down the block. That level of intentionality and mindfulness and movement, we recreate that at retreats. And I was able to appreciate that my body taught me mindfulness. So I was able to appreciate my illness experience. Not that I would recommend that someone go through an illness experience to have that. We could easily go into a retreat to have it. But if we remove the suffering and get in conversation with the illness, what are you here to teach me? Because I'm going to get something out of this. I'm not calling in the illness, but I'm going to get something from this. And if we listen to the echoes, then sometimes we can hear it's an ancestral harm.
Can I just say this last thing, and then I'm gonna hop off because Sister Regina is joining us. I love that you said that. And thinking about like ancestor work and what our ancestors have to tell us. My mother, this is the 12th year that my mother has been that has passed, since she's been gone. And I'm clear that my mother has been moving. She's been the force intentionally moving me in my life for the last at least 7-8 years. And really what it is she's reparenting me from the other side, right? And Ifa, we say you heal your life, your work is healing your folks 7 generations forward and 7 generations backwards, right? And so what I know today is that my mom also had lipedema, and that in me being able to and her kind of leading me on this journey of discovery, I'm not just answering my own questions. I'm not just healing myself, right? Like I'm healing my mom's story and then figuring out where her story lives in my family story and then what has to be healed with that. But that it's deeply connected, and without my ability to listen and make space for my mother's presence in my life currently, helping me shape conversations with my grandmother and parent my grandmother. So my mother is parenting me from the other side, and then I'm also parenting my grandmother who's an elder, because there are things that I know today that my grandmother doesn't know, and to be able to live on that continuum, ultimately to get us to healing. So thank you so much. I'm so excited about this panel. I'm gonna look from the other side. All right.
Thank you for joining us, Regina.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure to be here. Oh, I'm probably needing to unmute myself.
No, we hear you.
Oh, excellent. But can you see me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, wonderful. It's a pleasure to be here. And I need to salute my ancestors.
Oh no, Antoinette, don't even try it.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
You're bringing a lot to the conversation. I think that people are understanding that. And we can rotate if other people want to be on. So if other people want to be on, please let me know. But yes, Regina, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
So I know, I know you've been on the ancestral path for quite a while, doing a lot of travel, unearthing a lot of things in your own family, but just the process allows us to unearth things in our family. Because as we talk about, and I do want to keep bringing it back to liberatory leadership, because I think that it's important for us to know, especially as you have young organizers, old organizers on, when you have leaders on, it's a question for them to answer. When you have, I work in operations, so therefore that's an aspect of HR. And I'm always thinking, well, this is what we should do. But then we have that word compliance for the state that says, oh, no, we can't do that. How do we, how do we create this dream of orgs that we want to live in, work with, pray in, without any shame, without any compliance, but a deeper understanding that everyone who is in here is making a commitment to not, you can't change a community if you're not changing yourself. You can't be stagnant and flow. You got to choose.
Indeed.
So therefore, we have to be able to allow this space where here we are in a conference talking about spirituality within the context of a liberatory leadership framework that allows us to think about how we want to move forward with creating and building organizations in our community. Because we're spiritual beings. We've been waiting to be, I always go, I'm just waiting for people can we at least be human together? I'm still waiting for humanity. So a lot of times people go, oh, that's so humane. Why is that the exception? We should be walking in our spiritual, we just walk into humanity. So I just, I want us to think deeply about this. What do you think? What is your experience, or what do you think? How can we integrate spirituality? For me, I've always said, how do you separate that out? How do I not come to the table and be who I am? But since now we're talking about it out loud, how do we make that happen when it's such diversity in spiritual understanding?
Iya, if I may, and I want to salute every person that intentionally made themselves to be present on today, especially during these times and for the climate at hand. And if I have to take cue by way of the seasons, because I am a seasonal spirit, then this is the time of reflection and for harvest and celebrating the fruits of your labor, for making atonement with the ancestors. Also to take self-inventory of your body, of your mind, of your spirit, because, you know, to what you said, how is it that we can be in places of prayer and actively work in leadership positions, and I don't even want to say integrating, because it's so necessary to have a sense of spirituality when you're doing liberatory type of work, right? And especially when some of us are commissioned by way of our ancestors to take on these positions, which I believe a great deal of every being that is here on today, and I salute all your crowns, are commissioned to do. We need to reflect and realign our purpose to make certain that the tasks that we are taking are tasks that we think we should be doing, that they're coming by way of a divine commission and aligned with your purpose, what keeps you on your steps towards your destiny walk. Now, when you have interruptions of isms and systems and oppressive forces, counter forces, so to speak, it can knock you off a balance and take you off your way, but you get mighty and get back up. As my grandmother, Mama Georgia, she passed just last year, and she was 108. And she used to say, stand on the wall, Regina. Yes, don't let nobody make you fall. Stand on the wall, right? And so she also says the kind of work that we do makes us missionaries. We should never be ashamed of who we are, carrying forward God's work or Source's work or Spirit's work or your ancestral commission. And to my sister, Antoinette, you have so much powerful wisdom in and around pain that can serve to continue to heal our communities, starting with our families, not overstanding that it might be something to inherit for you to decode and heal not only your family, but a community and a nation. Right? And so our bodies become our temples. And so we must take care of that first before we can do anything. We got to bring it in just like you bring in a car to get a tune-up. And sometimes the world, or I would say crises or counter forces, will push you, or certain circumstances, just like most recently we lost a major vital force in our Orisha community, our dance community, our drum community. He's a wisdom keeper. He's a Babalawo. Babalawo, Awolo, Yagbe Onilu, Ibayi Tonu. He just passed. This man he just passed. And we give praise to his life and send light. But it takes with him libraries. He wasn't a tree, he was a forest. And so what that means is that send some of us up the ladder. Depending on how much work or trailways he blazed, that might mean even more work. Where does this community stand? Where are we? We have to take inventory before just getting up and running into the work. And that's part of that kind of wisdom and guidance that we align in our leadership, especially when we're guiding and leading our folks. And we cannot do it alone, but we also need the health of the community to maintain the wealth of the work that what we're doing. Spirituality is critical right now.
It's critical. We talk about it and community. And I would invite, since so many people here are with orgs, I would invite the possibility of us doing community rituals as part of the organizing that we do, that we actually do ceremonies that help clear and clean energy, ceremonies that can honor all of our ancestors. And definitely, like you were saying, Regina, being very mindful of what time it is in terms of seasons. Because you're right, you know, we're harvesting, but we're also going into the winter, where it's about hibernation and thinking and reflecting. And how do we do our calendar year so that, should our calendar year be so busy in December when we should be thinking and reflecting And can we imagine coming together on our retreats and our staff gatherings where we sit in meditation and do a group imagining of what could be possible and make that happen, so that we are no longer doing
Yes.
brainstorming, but we're doing meditative, we're birthing something through meditation, prayer, and spiritual direction. Because spirit is always with us. Our ancestors are always with us. I get out of bed and say good morning, acknowledging this is what I need to do today. I need help. So I think that however we were raised, we need to be authentic about it. We need to, bring it with
Yes.
us. The separation of church and state was church and state, wasn't church, it wasn't state and spirit. So we need to really know that and remember that we're imagining something that hasn't happened yet, that it doesn't exist. The young people, the people I work with, I always see them as change makers. You're shapeshifters. You're creating something
Yes.
different. And that's what you came to do. You volunteered to do this. So you got to show up, and you have to show up, and we get help. That's the thing is, we get help, not just the body that we see next to us, but all those spirits that are behind us. It can't just be something we say. It's got to be something we embody. So many times we bring our stories, circling
Embody.
back to the whole idea of these stories. I used to be a school teacher, and all I heard was
Yes.
the brokenness of my students. Well, Mr. Shin, I can't, can we turn the page? Can we create something different? Because that's what you become when you're part of the solution. I don't need to hear the problem. We all know the problem. We're looking for new solutions, and nothing is off the table because it
Absolutely.
needs to be different. We need to have protests where people are drumming in white, where people are rattling, where people are building altars and doing their traditional dances. You want to put some fright in people? Do that. And it's not about fright, but it's about, I'm bringing everybody out here to fight you, to change this.
Yes.
I also want to offer
Yes.
something, especially as someone that has come from a lot of trauma, and what was a block for me initially when it came to including spirit, not just even publicly, but in my own personal walk. Because I came from a lot of abuse, I didn't trust the people that raised me. So then I didn't trust the people that birthed them. And so I didn't call on spirit because I couldn't imagine what it would be like to have people related to me by blood that could hold me with tenderness. And then also the way that we are relating to spirit, oftentimes we're informed by it, by media. And so any conversation where it's the presence of anything that does not have a body, it fits into the horror genre. So in my lived experience, I didn't have people I trusted. And then in the experience of what I witnessed, it was poltergeist. So I had to really be open to communicating with spirit and do so cautiously in a way that my nervous system could be with, and understand that I wasn't inviting a poltergeist experience. And so I took on journaling because from my illness experience, there was a point in time where I was journaling and I was allowing my uterus to talk. I was giving my uterus voice and I was writing because that's where the pain was held for me. And I switched over to journaling and giving room for the ancestral voice. And just journaling, I think I journaled for a month. And each time I would sit in front of the paper or in front of my computer, it did help to bring down the poltergeist thing. And I got that was part of our narratives being co-opted by a system that aims to keep us separate. And that part of what whiteness has dealt with is them being separated from spirit to the point where they don't know how to deal with what their ancestors have done. But my ancestors have been waiting for me to connect. And so as I started journaling, there was something that came through that from that point forward, it shifted. And it was to not be ashamed of the ways in which my ancestors survived.
Yes.
And so I got the violence that was passed down.
Amen.
That was survival, pure survival.
See?
And then from there, I got
all day.
Message was compassion for myself because
Yes.
I self-harm from the beginning. And so then for me to not be ashamed of the ways in which I've survived, the ways in which I've placed myself in harmful relationships, in jobs that were killing me, all because I had disconnected. So once I got that message, then I was able to be with my ancestors with full compassion for the amount of trauma that was done onto their bodies. They didn't have enough resources to process any of it. All they had resources to do was to survive. And they survived long enough for me to be on earth. And the baton has been passed for me to gather up resources to do that processing work that they couldn't do. And in that way, we're in a relationship.
That's a very good point because I'm older, so therefore it's been a process, a long one. You're bringing what's real because I get on social media and I hear strange things from our young people, what they believe, what they say is true. And where's she at quoting from Google? So what that tells us is that we need to expand because we're always unfolding, so we need to expand what we even teach. If we're teaching organizers to go out and train them to affect change, we need to know where they are in their own change, because when you come in, a lot of people think, and I was like that, hey, let me just get out this house and I'm cool. Once you're out the house, you just brought the whole suitcase and trunk with you of stuff that was wrong as a result of maybe being there. So we think that if we move, that's change. If I become an organizer and help people, because that's what most young people always say, I just want to do something to help people. We are beautiful, good people. We just want to help people. But we bring all the trauma of what really happened. And that trauma is not something that's going to be told in an interview. That trauma is not something that's going to be told on a resume. And that trauma is not something that's going to be told because of compliance. You can't tell people that, oh, I know her story, but I can't tell you because I have to hold it because I'm doing this job. So when we talk about reimagining, we have to reimagine the whole system. We don't want anyone to be harassed, so there should be things in place. But at the same time, there's information we need to know, but what you brought up too is trust. A lot of us don't have trust. And if you've been abused, especially by people who raised you, then you lost trust early, because if the people who you thought were supposed to love you and take care of you don't,
essentially,
then you can't trust. Who do you trust?
Connecting in to what both of you said. Yes.
Uh-oh.
To what both of you have said. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Regina.
Bless. Thank you. So there's been a neighborhood blackout right now, and so I'm in my indigenous technology right now, so that I can stay connected. If we are ready, we don't have to get ready. I wanted to plug into what both of you are saying. One of the tools or instruments I use to connect into community or some of the environments that I'm working in is genealogy. Because everyone has ancestors, everyone has family, no matter what your status or your connection might be. I see genealogy as a defining tool. I think it's important that people plug in to their stories, whether some of the missing family members you may or may not know or might have been adopted. You hold a special connection, a special commission for connecting. And so with the actual science or the field knowledge of it, I walk people through the fundamentals of, this starts off with you and then your parents' parent, and so on. And so that keeps exponentially growing per generation. And so when we find fault with one or may not know one, sometimes we discount a whole nation of ancestral folks that are connected to you, that's trying to reach you or connect with you, whether you may know their names or not. But through the journey of the family history, as much as you may know, through genealogy, we're able to collect data points and bytes and follow their steps for records that's been aggregated. They're public records and we have access to it and it's free, and begin to put together the story and connect into your ancestor story. And inside of that journey, you start taking inspiration and placing it into perspective. Oh, this is how they had to do it, not layering our 21st century thought over their era of living, but actually appreciating the toil, the trial, and the triumphs, the victories that aren't often perceived by media or won't be in media about what our victories are. But they are lived stories in us. Some of them are inherited that we may not know, and we go through a transformational soul's journey like Sister Antoinette with the journaling and allowing her body parts to talk to her. That's something of Congo cosmology, where when you sit and listen and imagine yourself going inside of your mouth as a stethoscope and then taking inventory and saying, heart, talk to me, what's going on with you, and going further down the esophagus and into visiting the different organs and asking them, what's ailing you today? What's bothering you today? And you're taking notes. And then when you come out of that environment, you're journaling and you're gaining insight that the pain is more than surface. It's something deeper. You begin to perform inquiry in and about it, and therein get yourself in a laboratory of healing and coming up with cures for yourself that all the time tends to connect to something you already knew or already exists, right? And then begin to reintroduce it if it's been forgotten. And that's some of the ways that ancestors want us to remember, to reconnect and say, hey, we're here. We have the solution. But because of all of the discourse in and around what we gather around us, in and around information, where we live, system, food, the isms in education systems, depending on where you are, not touching feet to the ground when your ancestors were people who tilled the soil. Just those type of things, reconnecting fuels memory, and then also guides you with your own personal pathway to power forward and transcend that embodied knowledge to the next. I find joy in this work. It is through communal kinship works that I work with organizations, starting right in my own backyard, as my grandfather would say, at the African dance and drum communities, with the African traditional religions, and even diaspora, and also extending to my work that's in nonprofit or corporate or wherever I am. It starts with the story. And everybody has family and everybody has ancestors. So it makes it a powerful transcendental tool. But more importantly, that's our foundation, is knowing our ancestors. At least in my heritage, is they are vital keys to who I am, and the work that I'll do today, and aligning me with my purpose.
Beautiful.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I think that that's one of the ways that we could bring it into our orgs. Because I know that when I was initially trained as an organizer, there was the whole "my truth is." And, so therefore you would talk about some truths. I remember speaking some truths I had never said to anyone, because I was in the moment of it was very ritualized to me, how it was presented, what we did, and then speaking your truth. After that, I felt a connection to everybody who was in the room that had it was different. It's like everybody's wall went down, and we know who you are, and that's a good thing. So I think that as we look at bringing people into these new organizations, as we look at new ways of training people, we need to really keep some component where people have to feel safe, and we're suspicious. And we're suspicious because, that's how the world has been with us, and a lot of times, because we live in Black communities, a lot of times I used to hear people say, well, I've been harmed by Black people. Well, you lived in a Black community. It's not because all Black people are like this. It's easier to harm someone who's close to you, I'm sorry, than not, So even when people, I don't like the term Black on Black crime anyway, but you're going to steal from the people who are next door. You're not going to go out your neighborhood. You're going to go into familiar turf. So I think that you just do, it's not a us thing. If we can just get past all Black people do kind of thing. Because living in Cali at one time and teaching there's no an all Black story. You're teaching 92 ethnic groups, and they all have a story.
Yes.
And their story sounds like our story. And it's like, well, wait a minute, and their love for their family sounds like our love for our family. And their rituals sound like our rituals. And their ceremonies sound like ours. And their children are wounded, and our children are wounded, and that's really why we have to bring in the spirituality piece and into as part of the work we do, because we have generations of wounded children. And when I say children, I'm talking about 25, 30-year-olds who are wounded, and who have been traumatized in their life. And, we have to send them to therapy as an option, but we have to bring back the ceremony and the rituals.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We have to be willing to stand and be authentic with our truth and be authentic in our lives, because we don't throw people away. See, that's what I always feel. It's like, look, we're not disposable people. We give people grace and forgiveness. But we got to bring that into our orgs. We got to imagine that component into our orgs. How do we do that? How do we bring, how about training outside? Not just have a wilderness training, but taking the class and go outside, because we're so disconnected from just being outside. So,
Yes.
I'm just so happy that people came, because they too are here because they know that this is necessary. They're probably the people who want to bring it to their orgs. Hopefully, some of the people are the people who are over orgs, because there are organizations now who just do that, who will come in and bring it for you, or at least a piece of it. We always say, well, you got to go do your work. I hear people say that to young people all the time. Well, you can't just skip your work. Can somebody define the work? Please stop saying we got to go do our work. What does that look like?
And then to say that, though, to say you have to go do your work, but to not actually provide a framework for it,
Yes.
support for it, resources for it, then it's really incomplete. And it's one of the ways in which we're not willing to listen to one another.
Yes.
So if we really are about indigenous practices and disrupting capitalism in our systems, capitalism is very individualistic or exploitative of the collective. And indigenous practices are about, there are different ways in which we can exist. We can exist through the I space, which is, of course, valuable, but there's also the we space. And so we haven't actually nourished what it means to be a we. We haven't nourished the space in between us. And part of enslavement was that the we space of what is known as Black people could only be tolerated if the we space came with chains. And so the we space, being a space of liberation for Black bodies, that hasn't been nurtured. Whenever we came together as a we through liberation, then Black codes and laws against us being together came up. So we need to work on the we space and then further expand that we space to include nature, to include spirit, to include our ancestors, to include the depth of us, to include even the child within us.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of having this fragmented way of being. And then if we have a strong enough container that can hold we, then those people who are still very much in their I and are fragmented can be held by that. But if we have a really fractured we space, then we can't support the people that need more support.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I want to say thank you too, Sister Regina, for the cosmology or Congo cosmology, because I've been practicing surrender when it comes to spirit. So like I'll practice things, but I won't necessarily have the language or the source of where it is. And so as you're saying that, I'm just like, oh, that's where that came from. But when spirit gives instructions, I listen. and then the rest will come along later. And so in this moment, like something I've been practicing for years, you just gave language to. So I really like that.
Thank you so much for your journey and sharing that powerful, transformative testimony that is innately inside of you, and you so beautifully articulated. So I'm certain it's inspiring others to go through that process as well. So I was pretty delighted to hear you have so much language about it. So it just reflects upon just ancestral knowledge and wisdom teachers who are no longer with us. Dr. Fukuyao, give praise to life, who was a pioneer and one of our foremost wisdom teachers, teaching us how to heal in that way.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
I just want to.
I'm sorry. Mm-hmm.
The path is really about surrender. It's about surrender. And if we really stop to think about what have we been surrendering, like bring mindfulness, bring attention to, what have we been surrendering to already? And then can we consciously choose to surrender to spirit? And if you can't take that on for a lifetime because the thought of it frightens you, then say, okay, for 1 quarter, I will surrender to what like comes up in me. I will honor what my intuition says. Or for a year, I will honor.
Yes.
Then give yourself that year, and the year plus one, you can go straight back to however you want to be. But like at least try it. And
Mhm.
the for me, I found the silliness in ignoring spirit when I thought about the five senses, because I've always been intuitive, but when you're an intuitive child and you tell your mama stuff that she didn't want anybody to know, then no one appreciates that, because I would see.
Right.
And so my environment didn't want to nourish that gift in me. But
Mm.
thought about like if there's a fire, I might not see the fire, but if I smell the smoke, I don't doubt there's a fire. If the smoke like moves into my mouth and I taste it, that tells me there's a fire. If I feel the heat of it, that tells me there's a fire. If I see it, that tells me there's a fire. Like all of these things, when my senses, if I hear the crackle of something burning, I know there's a fire. And I don't question those senses, even if I'm not seeing it. And so if my spirit says there's a fire, I'm going to
Mhm.
trust with the same reliability as if my nose smelled it.
Mhm. Of
That
course.
sense has just as much importance and reliability.
Absolutely.
Like sometimes I might smell something that it's burning and it's not actually, but then I don't question and be like, man, my nose is not working. Like, no,
Mhm.
like my senses can tell me a thing and it won't be on point. But we have so much like unforgiveness for if the spiritual message is not 100%. It's a relationship. So sometimes my eyes see something and it's not actually what's there, but I don't curse sight.
Mhm.
Exactly. Exactly. That's a good example. That's a very good example. Yes.
And in the way that you just explained about how the senses play a role and are a vital part is why this particular conversation, this session is so critical in adding the notion of wellness to it. And because if we are not well, we cannot serve others. If we are not serving ourselves in wellness, we cannot serve others. And there's wealth with health. Health is wealth. And so, without just saying it as a cliche, to what you said earlier, Iya, about it needs to be reincorporated back into our trainings, and also bringing in nature, how the plant and animal kingdom come into play as they are creative forces here on this planet, living longer than us, right? And then is our relationship to them, especially needing the plants to reconnect with them instead of the synthetics that are prescribed to us by medical professionals, about re relearning our root medicines by even just going
Yes.
to our backyard and seeing if we can identify the leaves and the plants, and or if you want to bring technology into it, scan it with your phone and then look it up and learn about the properties. But you can best believe if you talk to an elder, and for as much as people dismiss our walking history through our eldership, a lot of times they're not revealing things because there isn't a genuine interest to hear what they have to say. They don't think people's attention span is long enough, and a lot of times if we're just sitting and listening to them, and if we come with inquiry and appeal to their intelligence, you'll find a lot of embodied language or information and wisdom ready to be poured out. Because in from their perspective, I'll hear my elders say, "Oh, you guys are just regurgitating what we already fed you."
Yes. Yes.
Did you?
But a lot of time people will say, well, how do I know it's spirit? And we have all had that situation in our life where we've walked outside, be it the car, the house, and a flash of a word pops in your head, key.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
you never think about it. You go, oh, shoot, I got the key. You might even say, oh, I have the keys and I'm moving forward. And then you come back home and you go, where's the keys? And you see now in your head that you left
Yes.
the key. And then, people always go, God, I heard to do the keys. If you heard it, who said it? So we
That part.
always know the Spirit is with us
Come
because
on.
you heard it.
Yes. Yes.
Somebody told you.
You
So
heard it.
we're walking with help all the time. You have to ask for help. There was a young sister on Instagram, and she was talking about every day she gets up and she reads the Bible. And that one day she was, she moving through her life. She wasn't doing what she needed to do. And she said that she realized that her not reading the Bible for her as a Christian was saying, I got it, God. You cool, I got it. And she said she walked into the world because she had said, I got it, and everything was wrong. Where for her, that balance came into reading her Bible and getting the word she needed to walk out that door with. For others, it could be anything. It's like what I was saying. I wake up and say, good morning, EI. Good morning, Baba. Because very early on, I had to name my spirit so that I could, I'm giving names. And my ancestors, I have a lot of ancestors, unfortunately, that I know on the other side. So I talk to my brother Charlie, and I'll go, now I can't have some subtle hint. If you got something to tell me, make it clear.
Make it plain.
Because these are these people.
Yes.
They know you.
Yes.
And so I talk, that's what I say. And so my messages come very direct. Even when I don't want them to, it's like, ooh, I said I wanted it like that, but that's how I needed it. And so our relationship with spirit doesn't have to be, on our knees and with our hands in prayer. It's a real relationship. It's like they got the bigger view, already. So why wouldn't you want someone who's got a better perspective, who has a different view of what's happening and can guide me? Don't do that, And you learn, you grow but then you start listening and saying, okay, but we have to, getting back to this whole idea of spirit, take it out of a ghost behavior and a witchcraft in a negative way behavior, a television behavior, and embody it back to us, because otherwise, they're always going to make us fearful of knowing our true power.
Yeah.
And we have to have that relationship.
It's part of the repair process. Like at the root of the word reparations is repair.
Yes.
And if you look at like what had our spiritual relationship be demonized, it's because during enslavement, that was a source of connection, power, rest, resourcing for us. And it threatened the slavery system because we were being positioned to have no support. And because we had spiritual support, like I was born in Jamaica. And so one of the practices is Obia. If you ever speak about Obia, it is associated with all things bad. But the British made it illegal because they were afraid of people that had spiritual connection. And the people that were preparing their foods, they didn't want them to know about what the earth had to offer them, for them to be liberated. It gave people access to liberation because they had connection with nature and with the winds in ways that the powers that were did not. And out of that making it illegal, then fast forward to now, it's become something that is dangerous. But at the source, It was dangerous because it led to liberation.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Get that.
Absolutely.
So we don't actually build relationship with spirit. And all of the ways in which so many of the systems that we needed to maintain our health, all of those systems were undermined. The family systems, they were undermined. Our spiritual systems were undermined. It was all to support an exploitative slave system. So all of that is part of repair. Reparations is more than a financial conversation. There are so many systems that are our foundation that need our attention and repair.
I love that you connect the two with spirituality and liberation, and particularly to the point around reparations more than being financial. Because truth be told, the repair work starts with spirit. You can get a check, and that check can come and go, unless you're a financial guru and you're going to invest it well. But chances are, if it's coming out of desperation, you won't keep it. But with your spiritual wellness, that'll take you a long way to even teach you how to handle wealth, because you'll be dealing with your worthiness. You will have reinstalled your value. But on the spiritual realm, it's like our ancestors have not forgotten, for as much as there is the concentration around trauma. We need to talk about the liberation, the blessings that liberated us, and remember that and teach that as well, and reintroduce it into family charters. And if we don't even know what family charters are, to reintroduce that concept where we're at as our families have been reimagined, then, within the nuclear age, right? And our ancestors, warrior people, came, for those who came to these United States or to this particular continent, still had and held on to what they knew.
Yes.
It wasn't just erased through, one whipping, one beating, one rape. You know what I'm saying? And as to that, one of the particular practitioners that I came into contact with, loved her book, very, very thick, Mami Wata's Healer Society of North America. And so this is a particular what we learned as myth, Mami Wata, but I had to, as always, I find with my people that there's a rhyme to the reason. There's some principalities to it. And so in getting beneath that and learning about the matriarchal societies, the power, what people speak to about the feminine principle, but that it's a real practice of honoring the sacerdotal nature of the matriarchal lineage of these African ancestor people. And lineages of them are warriors, and their domain or their dominion specifically for spiritual reparations. The reparations in that it's going to repair your mind or have not forgotten what has been done to you. And so working to suit you up and fuel you so that you can warrior for yourself or remember for liberation, right? Reparation, and also to teach the next so that they're not operating just from a place of inferiority or trauma that you came, even in the midst of this, it still exists. As we are even speaking about it, and there's such a conference, and this is such a session, this is how I know it to be true, what these ancestors have said. And she died last year, having produced anthologies of books, tracing it back as a scholar, back pre-Roman, pre-Greco, so on and so forth. And what's been hidden behind the Vaticans or in the basements of Russia, that Black Madonna, so on and so forth, but not mythic, our people, right? And again, going back to what you had spoke about earlier, being afraid of us having those powers, that root knowledge, that deep connection with the natural laws that makes things spin, turn, change, transfer, intuit. Those are all things that's embodied in all of us, respectively.
That's
and
right.
To be remembered, and is our form of liberation. This is why this session and this convening right here is critical, if it be the moral compass even of the conference, to even be speaking about that and to ensure our wellness before we can.
That's
I want
right.
to say thank you to the
Yes.
both of y'all for that. Y'all cleansing my heart. Both of you are cleansing my
I
heart.
feel blessed that both of you, after being called out, was willing to answer the call.
It was
It's
you,
like you're
Iya.
walking your
How can we
talk,
say
and that's
no?
what we have to
Yes.
do. We have to walk
Yes.
our talk. There's a lot of people who say, well, I want to do this work. And it's not easy work if you're trying to
Yes.
live a spiritual life, or if you're trying to embody a spiritual practice, because that means if I call you at midnight, I expect you to show up, not with excuses. You have to show up.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
so,
Yes, ma'am.
and I love the fact that you said it doesn't matter how many beatings you have. You know what you know, and you're going to know it until you're dead. So, this
Yes.
whole mythology around what we lost is the biggest myth that we
Yes.
have to acknowledge and reteach ourselves, our families, and our community, because it's just not true.
Mhm.
It's just not true. Some of those enslaved people were priests and priestess. They were,
Yes.
so they remember. They've been through years of training, and they're going to forget for a whooping? They might
Yeah.
have known it was coming.
Right.
So the blessing for all of us is that because of them, we're here.
Yes.
Because of them, we're here. And that means a lot personally, but at the same time, it means we got a lot of work to do.
Yes.
Those are some big shoes to fill.
Yeah.
The baton is a tree. It's not a little branch.
Yeah.
Because even the trees have stories to tell us. I always think that how wonderful to be a part of a spiritual reality where we understood that we didn't need a Bible or a canon, because we knew everything was sacred, and we knew it to the point that we named it. So we
Yes.
call our wind Oya. So
Yes.
in every African language, there's a different word for it. But we name the trees, we name the mountains, we recognize that we shared space with them.
Yes.
And we have to remember that that's who we are, that we're indigenous people. And we need to get back to that, especially as change makers.
Yes.
You know, we're talking to change makers. These are not ordinary people coming to a conference like this. These are people who are fighting for change on everyone's behalf. And what we're doing is saying, invite us in to that change. Invite spirit to be a part of that change. Invite people who do spiritual work to be part of your professional development. You know, that it has to look and be different. That we have to remember the songs. We got to remember the chants. We got to
Yes.
dances. We have to, and we know it. We remember it. We just have to now do it. That wasn't something that, oh, that was ancient Africa, or that was pre enslavement. There's no stopping point for this. It's an everlasting spirit, is eternal. The
Yes.
ancestors are with us. I talked to this young sister who had her first child, and she said, "You know what my daughter is? We all have, I'm a baby boomer. So you all have these generational, and she had alpha. Her baby's generation was alpha because it was 2022 or something. And it thrilled me because
Wow.
alpha is the beginning. Do you know what that means as change makers? that the beginning has come back.
Yes.
And
That
we
we've
get
circled a revolution.
and they
Yes.
get to train us because they're going to
Yes.
have the remembrance. They're coming with the remembrance. But we have to also know that we're going to be birthing them and
Yes, Lord.
caretakers of
Yes.
them and teachers and grandparents and neighbors and friends of them. And we have to honor the ancestors and talk to the trees and, don't look at meteorologists to see what the weather, step outside
Yes.
and smell it,
Yes.
and talk to our bodies. We're living cells. Of course, we would talk to our bodies. That
Absolutely.
just makes sense.
Yeah.
And dance
So,
and drum and sing
yes,
and dance and drum and sing in a circle to encapsulate the energy and revolve and circulate over and over again so that spirit says, oh, there's my happy place. I want to join them. And then
yes,
we are overcome with spirit, or we are transformed by spirit, or we transcend because of spirit. And this is vital to our nature and who we are. I do
yes,
agree with you, Iya, in that I believe that our communities starve, and I'm going to say community, those who we commune in unity with. I got
yes.
that from Brother Chriswell Muhammad. He defined that for me a long time ago, and I was like, oh, right. And with those people that we make atonement necessary with the ancestor rites of the season or the seasonal rites that we need to come together. And just because we work at wherever doesn't mean that we're exempt from that obligation
That's
to
right.
nature or to our ancestors.
That's
So
right.
we can begin incorporating that in our bylaws, agreements, or climate culture or culture climate, all these, different phrases, just that we do it, like you say. We need to be into doing it. Our communities, our places are starving. Sometimes people think it's the building's fault, but it's the people in the building that need to make it happen. So that is definitely a prayer I'm uplifting, especially in my Bay Area backyard right about now, because we are a vibrant, richly encultured community, but it has gone through some violations, redevelopment, and other things that are running amok, but it does not transcend the power of we.
That's right. That's right. Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I don't know where we are. Oh, we're exactly where we should be all the time. It's 5:30. I just can't even thank you enough because I was truly having anxiety. Um, and see how that worked out. Because I went
Yes.
outside, I called the people on the phone, said, "Oh, I don't want to blow this." Um, and so Spirit said, "Let me give you two more people." And just seriously, that's the magic you always have to recognize that
Yes.
happens.
Yeah.
We call it synchronicity,
Yes.
but when we ask, we need to stand in expectation of receiving.
Yeah.
Mm.
So I went outside and asked for help,
You know what was
and both
interesting?
of you showed up.
I went to the other session, but no one was in there, and so I came to this session, and then you called my name.
See? And this is what we're saying. Spirit is always working. We
Yes.
have to always recognize the signs and symbol and stand in gratitude. Thank you for this. Thank you. What's the lesson? We can't stay in the hurt. We got to stay in the lesson,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
Because just
Or
like I think someone
learn
else
how.
was saying, well, Oprah always says what she knows. What I know for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I know for sure. Yes.
Yes. And part of what I know for sure is beyond survival as a person who might have been sexually abused is thriving.
Yes.
I was able to step into a classroom and identify girls who were being abused. And you say, thank you to Spirit. Not for the abuse. It didn't kill me. It taught me what abuse can do, what it looks like, how you fold up and you start identifying people and you're placed in places that you can help. So, both of you have been my blessing, my gift, and everyone's gift who has been an ear distance. Antoinette, you are just wonderful. You really are. I am learning from you as we all learn from each other. It doesn't matter how old we are. We all bring something of value.
Yes.
And so I value you and what you have brought to all of us today. And I stand in gratitude for you showing up in your white. You know you were ready. And Regina, I'm so happy to see your face. My sister of Oya. I just, give thanks for you who I haven't seen in years.
Right?
To just show up. And I saw your name and I said, wait a minute, Regina's here. And then you wrote something about you'll see me later. I'm like, oh no, she's coming. So bring her up.
That's right.
So it all worked out as it should. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for everyone who came.
Thank you.
Please leave anything that you want to leave in terms of how can people contact you? How can people join your groups?
Well, I'm at blackexhale.org and in Facebook and Instagram as Black Exhale. And that's where you'll find me. And Spirit and I will meet you there.
Thank you.
I love it.
Thank you.
And thank you, Black Excel. I'm going to be there breathing right along with you in spirit, in alignment. Iya, a grand salute to your crown. And every time you ask me, I say yes. So it doesn't matter where I am in the world. And I was so super thrilled to see you at the helm of C2. That just touches my heart from a very nostalgic place. But I can be reached at Nzo Khalifa, Nzo Khalifa, Khalifa, across platforms. And also this season, I am restoring the family charter, starting with our stories. So if you need to get your family tree started, I'm here for you. Your genealogist, your family historian as well. And I also want to direct people to the powerful session that's going to be led by speaker Nika Sewell-Smith, who's a genealogist as well. I believe it's through liberation and racism. You have to see that, make certain you see that tomorrow because of how she reads that inside of the orders of the day. But Nzo Khalifa is where I can be reached across platforms. And I'm honored to have been in this space, and I'm grateful to our ancestors to have aligned us in shared kinship. Thank you.
Ashe. Well, that is it for us today. Listen to Spirit.
And where
I'm at C2. I have a group, and it's called Black Women in the Sacred Arts. Right now, it's through Meetup, but I do 22 women at a time. So I'm starting for my January group. It's definitely a narrative part, but we do a lot of embodiment. We make things, we go out, we do things. It's in person. I am in Atlanta.
Like that.
Sorry, I'm in Atlanta. So yes, I can't do another Zoom. And because you want to do embodied work, embodied work means you have to actually go into the woods to talk to a Chelsea. You can't just have this theoretical, intellectual conversation all the time. You know,
Right.
you can have it, but that's part of the work we talk about,
Right.
you
Right.
know? Y- So thank you, everyone. It is 5:37. We're a couple minutes over. Thank you so much. Thank you,
Thank
thank you,
you.
thank you.